let's begin this discussion where Richa Bansal, consulting editor at Fiber to Fashion, has kindly consented and appreciated and wanted to do this wonderful webinar for buying agents and buying in the new global order. I'd like to introduce everyone as per the pictures. Jyoti Saikia, well known already from Triberg, and Atul Nagi. He is in Dubai, has a track record in apparel and 40 years of business, and is currently heading operations for a company called Carpet Crafts LLC in Dubai. So I thought we'd get in someone from outside to give us a perspective of what's happening in the buying field. Anika Pasi, one of our younger buying agents, from country manager for TW House Sourcing, New Zealand, will be giving us some perspectives from her side as a liaison office in India right now. Sandeep Gulati, Director Nirvana Sourcing, with businesses in USA and Australia. Then we have Sanjeev, President and CEO at TQM Global Buying. Vishal Dhingra also has a large track record of 40 years, or maybe more than that, in textile apparel, and is currently doing industrial garments and uniforms. Then we have Venki Nagan, the CEO at Asmara Group, has some of my favorite brand labels that he works with, Abercrombie and Fitch and Tom Taylor. Christine Rai, our chairperson at BAA, driven with the handicrafts and crafts, but is now slowly getting into the apparel business too. Myself, there's nothing much to say today. I'm just the concept creator and been there in industry for a really long time. I don't want to count the years, then everybody knows my age. So I'm going to hand over the mic, as one would say, to Richa Bansal to be the anchor today and ask us some leading questions and take our suggestions for the market. What is going to be happening and how we are going. We are all working. I mean, from day one, I don't think so any one of us has stopped working, even with the lockdown going on. And this is here to stay. It's not going to end tomorrow. It's not going to, the economic impact is going to last at least for 3 years. So we need to be prepared and work accordingly with our customers, with our sources to protect our businesses, and to also look at things in a different manner, because technology has overtaken us today and we have no choice but to go forward with it. So I'm going to ask Richa Bansal to take over, and in case Ankit, we have other members coming in because Sanjeev had sent this mailer to separate people. So I would like to tell them that they can put their comments in the question and answer session, and any one of us panelists will answer them if they come on. So Richa Bansal, over to you, and thank you again.
Thank you, Rohini. Rohini, there's Ilango here. I've joined the meeting.
Okay, let me introduce Ilango. Yes. Great.
Welcome,
okay,
welcome, Ilango.
Okay, Ilango is, I call him the South Indian movie star. And he's a textile expert, also chairman of ABAT, Association of Buying Agents, which I am a founder member of 25 years ago, but he has carried on in the South and very creditable. He will be giving us some insights as to the business from his viewpoint, that as he's sitting in Tirupur. So thank you for joining us from Tirupur, Ilango, and welcome. So, Richa?
Thank you, Rohini.
Thanks, Rohini. Thank you so much for introducing all of us. And hi, all. And so we are in an upside-down world, COVID-19 pandemic, chaos, and no one can say with certainty, how things will play out. And there are many, many aspects of the business that need to be looked at or kept in mind, from in consumer demand to logistics and shopping. So let's explore them one by one, and I'll put questions to each one of you. And then in between, if there are questions, I'm sure we can take the questions and address it to whosoever we want the question to be answered. So let me begin with you, Jyoti. The supply chain is broken, and it is obvious that things would not stay the same way again. And then there's the renewed vigor for nearshoring, both in the US and Europe. What can it mean for smaller apparel exporters like Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh, which are far away from the buying countries? Could you get my question, Jyoti?
No, just repeat that, please, Richa.
Yeah, the supply chain is broken, and it is obvious that things would not work the same way again. And then there's the renewed vigor for nearshoring, both in the US and Europe.
Yes.
What can it mean for smaller apparel exporters like Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh, which are far away from the buying countries? Not to forget, of course, India too.
Okay. So firstly, I'm going to say Bangladesh, I wouldn't categorize smaller. They are a very large entity with a very significant contribution to global apparel trade. So, the problems will be different. But the question that you're asking, regardless of size, is that if more countries are going to produce product closer to home, then what happens to those countries who were actually supplying them? So yes, it is an issue. I think certain countries have a jump start. I'm talking to people in Europe, and I understand there's a resurgence of business from places like Morocco, places like Turkey, which will supply the regions around them. And because they have textiles, it's also easier. I also hear very early signs of discussions that some companies may actually convert their distribution centers into partial production centers where workers are available. And politically, it's going to be a dialogue about bringing work home. But at the same time, there is still a very large piece of business that can't always be nearshored. So as far as we are concerned in India or in the subcontinent, I think everyone here would agree that we're going to see a very significant drop in business regardless of nearshoring, for the simple reason that demand is coming down and there is a lot of inventory waiting to be liquidated. So what does that mean for us? It does mean we look at trading with partners nearer home. Not just at home, but across the borders, close to us. It does mean that we relook at the kind of product that we're going to make. And I will share with you one of the things that we are beginning to do, which is repurpose cancelled product. It's not only about putting it out in the market to liquidate through jobbers. There is a possibility of repurposing some of it for either other countries. For example, we're looking at the southern continents and saying, okay, if spring summer is closing down here, when we talk about Australia, we talk about South America, the season is reversed. Is there any way we can repurpose for them? So I think we need to think out of the box. This is one such idea. But to your point, will it have an impact? It is part of the impact that is occurring, which will slow down our businesses quite dramatically, and we have to find new ways to sell. I'm also going to bring up another point which I've come across recently. In the home and accessory business, a lot of brands used to buy from what we call market sources, which were landed duty paid, folks who designed and had the product ready and you could shop and fill your own stores. I'm beginning to see a lot of online people reaching out, showing us the product, especially in areas that will be post-COVID usage. For example, it's not just masks and gloves and hats, it's also your own bottles, your own carriers for your food. You're no longer likely to buy as much as you did outside. You're not going to run out and buy at the local cafe. And then how do you carry all this product? we're talking about overalls, we're talking about coveralls, things that people may want to use if they're out on the streets and out for a period of time with work. But what we are seeing is there's a lot of online people who actually have stocks, and they're reaching out online with very neatly done presentations. Product is looking good, the photography is great, the price is there, and they're willing to supply you anywhere 10 pieces to 10,000 pieces. So I'm also looking at this new competition, saying that you don't have to walk into somebody's warehouse to shop from the market. You can now shop online and bring it over to whichever store. You may have 2 stores, you may have 20, you may have 100 stores. So beyond this, I'm also talking to a lot of young designers who have their own businesses. And what I'm beginning to see is that these young designers are actually creating new ideas for selling. Again, this is local sourcing, local sales, so that nearshoring from a design perspective is also taking off. Now I'd like to open that to everyone else and see what other ideas are emanating.
Anybody would like to pitch in with what new trends are you seeing, the way Jyoti has outlined 3, which are, I think, very interesting trends? Anika, I think you want to say something. You're not audible. I think you need to switch on your mic.
Yeah, Richa, sorry.
Yes, yes.
I am from the New Zealand market, so that's a market that has recovered and that has handled the COVID situation very, very well. We are moving to level 2 tomorrow, which means all our stores are going to be open. And, and the way the Prime Minister has led, she's stood out, she's kind of a leader that has led it from the front. And, she comes 3 times on Facebook and tells everybody with a lot of transparency in terms of what the government is doing, what the businesses are supposed to do. And that is how our leadership has also done. So I think one of the very big trends that has emerged, because we are going to be opening very, very soon, is online space. You really have to ramp it up. Yeah, we had click and collect going on for about 4 weeks now, and our online sales are nearly 75% more than what they were in the same quarter last year. So as Jyoti said, online is going to be the game changer. And how now people are not going to be traveling, the buyers are not going to be traveling for a while. So how you put up your product online as virtual showrooms, how you do the selling, how do you do your market week, you sit across with the buyer and do negotiations. So that's going to be a very, very big thing, and how you model your company on that front is going to be a game changer. And as Jyoti said, new markets. So, so Australia, New Zealand, Southern Hemisphere, that is what we need to see. And especially the markets that have recovered quickly from COVID. So China, for example, can we sell something to China from here? And then sustainability is going to be the game changer, So those 3-4 things are very, very important. And I think your own talent, recruit the best talent that you can, which is clued in terms of how, to go about the new way of working. So it's going to be a lot of AR, VR, Internet of Things, and the quicker you adapt to it, the better it will be. That's what I can say for the retailer's point of view. So we are really looking for suppliers who can bring that thing to the table. How can we view everything that they have in a very, very online platform? Mm-hmm.
Anybody else would like to add to that, to what Anika has said? Any other?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think that's lovely what they have said, and it's all very true. And I think what is going to happen going forward is positively, like we had all this vertical integration and specialization. That is all gone out of the window. It's all about customization to the needs of the customer and customer who is going to be, serviced. And therefore, we are lucky enough that we have all this digitization up front at the buyer side of it, but at the back end, we don't have that digitization happening at a rate at which all the buyers have done. And I think that would be the major change happening in the market, which we'll see. And, it will be like, I see it as in terms of a small cooperatives, like just imagine of having a leather industry concentrated in one place right now. Who can do the shoes, who can do the bags? It's all in one place. So you're not vertically, individual companies not vertically integrated, but is supported by cross, product teams are all around the world. And I think that would be fantastic way of change happening coming forward. And you're looking at new technologies like RFIDs, point of sale, and then how to convert that into this one, your production changes, and also especially the new wave is with the new designers coming in who are using AI technologies, who are using, like Instagram to determine what the fashion trends are. I mean, the basic thing in the fashion industry is that we have a 9 months, kind of a 9 to 10 months period of, from concept to delivery, which needs to reduce, and I think that is what we are going to see after this. That is what has been very clearly crystallized all over the place right now. That is what the need is.
Anybody else would like to pitch into that?
Hi, Elango here.
Yes.
I think the post-COVID, what we are going to see reactions from the retailers is that they will no more be coming with telephone number orders. Definitely, the quantities are going to be very small, and the factories need to be flexible and try to get adjust to these smaller quantities. This is going to be future. Thank you.
Okay. So my next question to you, Elango, is going to be to you, Elango. And Tirupur is, we all know Tirupur is a textile hub known to be very, very interwoven. What this also means is that the entire region can be affected by, can get affected by these adverse situations, as has happened with the issue of migrant workers. As how concerned would you be about textile hubs? And, I'm connecting that to the point that Atul just made, where, where you're saying that vertical integration is in a sense being thrown out of the window, and now hubs could, where hubs could kind of get together and supply products, support each other and, supply a product line, could be footwear, accessories, or whatever. What is your opinion on that?
See, the strength of Tirupur is the ecosystem where, there are very few vertical integrations. If you see, the majority of the successful exporters have a standalone garment unit. They are not vertically integrated, and they make for great brands. So I don't think that, the vertical integration, because of the movement of the migrant laborers from Tirupur now, I think there will be a large scale labor deficit in the market, and only the people with vertically integrated units will suffer because of low labor. I think those standalone units definitely will not suffer and are flexible. So I think under this situation, Tirupur will not suffer, in my opinion, going forward.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anybody would like to add a point there on the migrant labor issue or anything of that sort?
No, I think that's a good point made by Elango.
Mm-hmm.
We'd go with it.
Okay. So let me turn to you, Venki. A whole lot of brands have come under the scanner for the way they handled orders that had already been produced. Manufacturing nations are expected to scrutinize contracts more carefully than earlier, especially those force majeure clauses. What is your take on it?
Yeah, without naming particular brands, but there are clients who handled it with a lot of dignity. Some who really handled it pro suppliers. Some who pretended to be supportive, but actually they were only looking at their interests. And then there were some who were outright open about how they mishandled it. Yes, in future, it's going to be very challenging about assessing our customers, in terms of their own credit ratings, their own financial status, and trying to find workable financial models. For example, it's very easy to always say that let's all work on safe terms like LC or advance. But in the future world with restrained cash flows, those are the particular terms which are almost very difficult for the customer also. So then how to find the middle ground, how to really be safe, because as buying agents, we are also responsible for our factories. And we have to find solutions for our factories. Also, those mills and fabric mills globally who were hurt by COVID started immediately switching to demands for advance payment, which is also not workable. So this whole financial modeling and risk assessment of customers, I feel, are going to be very important. We'll have to take a judgmental decision about which clients are safe or not safe.
Right. Anybody would like to add to that? Okay.
Yes, I think we need to keep the compliances of the customers also into mind going ahead. See, what we have noticed during Corona times is that everyone was focusing on the compliances maintained by the factories. The factories had inventory sitting with them, and the customers could easily get their way out to go for cancellation wherever possible. So I think we need to also work out a plan in such a way, our contracts have to be in such a way that we also get the buyers bound by these terms and conditions. So we have to think about both the sides to keep them safe.
Right. Okay, I'll move on to the next panelist. Anika, I'll come to you now. And as you know, as I was saying, I would like the brand perspective from you. Basics are evergreen, and you know, but tell me, did you guys cancel orders? There is increasing talk of cutting the supply chains short, in that the end consumer, we've already discussed this in a sense, will need to be as close to the supplier, manufacturer as possible. So do you think this is what is going to increasingly happen?
Yeah, just give you a perspective to what our brand is. So we are the largest retailer in New Zealand. For 5 million people, we have about 260 stores across 6 formats of businesses. So about 3 years ago, we decided to go EDLP, and I had set up the India office, and that really helped to, and we are into mass market, you know, so all our apparel comes from Bangladesh. So being on the EDLP model, so we are on the basics, as you said, the basics are going to stay. So whilst this COVID thing was happening and New Zealand did manage the situation pretty well, we actually did not have too many cancellations. We had more move outs and move ins. And just last year, we had kind of, you know, really revamped the way we work. So earlier we used to commit to like annual capacities and, you know, block fabrics, and we had long lead times, 90 days, etc. But now we've gone into very strategic relationships with our suppliers, and they hold capacity, they hold grade, and something which was a timeline of 90 days, you know, we've really brought it down. We work on trigger dates for cutting, sewing. So there's always a lot of vendor managed inventory thing is going on, and a lot of collaborations are in place. So we've actually been very strategic, and we didn't really have to do much of cancellations at all. So that's the upside of it. In terms of near sourcing, we've set up offices in other countries, and we are increasing our business with Indonesia, which is where a lot of furniture and our hard goods products are coming in. But, you know, basis the model that we have now worked out, you know, and the stock turn that we are aiming to have, it's working quite well. You know, the lead times have been cut substantially. So it's going pretty well. Near sourcing is always a good thing, but for a country like New Zealand, which is so far off and the globe, the nearest obviously is China, and China we have had an office for about 15 years. So India office came on about 3 years, and we nearly had no sourcing out of this region, but now we are nearly 35% of the assortment in terms of apparel and home as well. Home is the big one from India. So technically, it's working pretty well actually for us in terms of timelines.
I'd like to open this question to all the panelists here. The China angle. How is it going to work out with China going ahead? Of course, it's one of those few countries where it started first, and it's also ending. It's coming to an end out there almost. So how and then there was a lot of talk about countries saying that not going to put all the eggs in one basket. So thinking of moving out from China to other countries, India, Vietnam, Bangladesh, and other countries. So anyone would first like to comment on that?
Pinky?
Yes, please.
Before COVID, the trade wars was already brewing. And so most sourcing directors had made strategic plans in the last 2 years to step-by-step cut down on China. Their goal was to bring China sourcing to 20 to 25%. Many of them had actually already completed that and implemented that. I personally don't see China going lower than that. That's like about the limit. So 25% of global sourcing will remain with China. So China will still be an important player, but whatever that has thrown out has become a good opportunity for various other countries.
Okay, another question related to what we are already discussing is, the global fashion industry is as much also about global trade. So you said the trade wars, and then in the backdrop of Brexit, the trade war, RCEP fallout, etc. It is not likely that we would see a new global trade order anytime soon. And these uncertainties are more or less, going to carry on, especially with more and more countries turning protectionists. What would be your take as a buying agent?
Richard, can we have the question once again, please?
Okay. The global fashion trade is as much also about global trade. The global fashion industry, sorry. In the backdrop of Brexit, US-China trade war, RCEP fallout, etc., it is not likely that we would see a new global trade order anytime soon. And these uncertainties are going to carry on, especially with more and more countries turning protectionists. What would be your take as a buying agent?
And I think any of the buying agents can speak, but I would kind of second what you're saying, Richa, because it's not going to change. Right now, all the economies are going to worry about, their internal economies. And of course, going local is going to be a very big mantra. Yesterday also our Prime Minister has said, be Indian, buy Indian. But, it's food for thought for the buying agents. How much can we do outside from within our resources, and how do we, fuel domestic consumption, etc. But I think one of the buying agents, if they put in their thoughts, that'll be really good. Yeah.
I believe.
Yes, Sanjeev.
India is already a very big population. So India never had to worry about their own domestic consumption. Rather, we find like many countries coming to India and investing into them because they find a lot of sales coming in from Indian population. So that way, India is not very big to worry. Even we can see past experiences. The Indian government had never focused too much on exports as they focused on the domestic sales, because most of the economy is dependent on the domestic sales. So they feel they are very safely organized as far as the domestic business goes.
Right. Anyone else would want to join to add on to that? Yes, Venki.
Just to tease my people and trigger them into a debate, I deliberately threw a question to my leadership teams, and I told them, imagine a scenario of the trade war and the political bickering between USA and China scaling up, becoming more and more serious, and kind of leading to sanctions of some form. On the other hand, we also heard that some of the European leaders had also got upset with the way China handled it. So what if some of the big players, Germany, Italy, Spain, get together and say, we also boycott China and we also impose sanctions on China? Can this happen? And, can that bring some opportunities? But most of my people said, sir, that is too much. No, that is not going to happen.
Yes, Atul.
Well, I mean, Venki, you're absolutely right. And the thinking has to be, today, please understand the comparative advantage is not going to disappear.
I didn't get the last part you said.
I said the comparative advantage is not going to disappear, okay? And everybody has to build up the infrastructures what China has built over 50 years. Nobody's got that infrastructure. If you look at what happened during this COVID, was basically China built up Vietnam, but Vietnam was just a supplier making cut pieces into garments and shipping it out, and they didn't have any factories to do anything if they didn't get the supply. So, I mean, as far as just China being 100% boycotted, and it is so intertwined in our daily living today, the price points which we live in, the price points which we expect. To think China out of the equation is not going to happen, but positively, given the opportunity, if all these economies of the world can come together, have a new world trade order where you could talk about how we could support each other in these terms. I mean, I understand the trade wars and all are for political purposes, which are being fought right now for elections and other things. But at the end of the day, consumer who is going to decide this, and consumer is not ready to pay higher prices because it is local or it is against China. So we have to really address that capacity issue and infrastructure build up, technology build up, and that's what it is going to happen.
Right.
I'll come in here with the point. I do think that, spending time thinking about can we take business away from China is really not of any value. We shouldn't even be spending any more time on that discussion. China is here to stay. They provide a certain benefit that nobody can take away from them. However, when I look at it, I say to myself and to our teams, what is it that we can do to be better? And one of the things that I think we need to keep building on is the fact that we have design, we have raw material, and we have the ability to manufacture. We do need to bring our manufacturers together to optimize and become a little more efficient. And I'm not talking about big factories. I actually believe the more medium-sized factories have a better chance in the near future because of the size of the orders going down. But I think if we can look at our manufacturing and the way we sell, we do as a country have a lot of things to put together to provide to our customers. And eventually business goes where there is opportunity, despite any sort of talk of restrictions, because sanctions, I agree, are not going to happen. That's a very far-fetched thought. In today's day, and you can actually become less global, but going into sanctions of this nature seem a little far-fetched. So my point is to look inwards and to say what can we put together in a better manner that our customers can look at India as a resource.
Okay. Anyone else would like to make a point?
And just let's look at what has happened in the past 2 months. Chinese factories have been up and running since middle of February, while the entire world is under lockdown. So, India and emerging countries have lost like big chunks of their GDP in these months, whereas China's, the trade has been up. All the metrics are up for them. So they have a head start, and they have a big head start in terms of infrastructure, costing, innovation, capacity, efficiency, productivity. So as everybody said, China's going to stay. It's just that we need to look inwards and see what can we do. How do we change the whole scenario? So.
Right. Yes, Sanjeev.
I need to add, I agree with both Anika and Jyoti that China is definitely going to be there always. But at the same time, when we talk of getting the benefits to India just to capitalize, see, this looks to be a very temporary phase. All the retailers sitting out there in Europe and USA, they cannot depend on these small countries because we are not still geared up to supply them and those capacities, those capabilities, what they're looking for. They have huge demands. which we still do not have capacities to fulfill. Number one. Number two, China, if we talk from perspective of apparels and textiles, I've been working with China also for the last 12 years. I have an office in Bangladesh, and I find China has developed so many different kind of blends and fabrics, which we do not even have in India. And using those blends, they are able to get into the price economies. My factories in Bangladesh, they're importing fabrics from China and very less from India, because India is not good in polyesters, and they are the players in polyesters. So ultimately, when it comes to price, when it comes to capacities, it's going to be China. Maybe next 3 to 6 months, some sentiments, negative sentiments of China is going to be there, but then ultimately they are going to go back to China. That's what I feel.
Right. Okay. So yes, Elango, please.
No, as my co-panelists said, I also have the same view that India lacks the ecosystem to replace China. And, I've seen this, I've been in the business for the last 30 years. In 2005, when the quotas went away, there was a big hue and cry that, India is going to beat China. But it never happened because we were not geared up for that, infrastructure-wise, the factory size-wise. And I think India has never been a candidate to replace China, and it is not going to be in the next 50 years to come. Thank you.
I unfortunately would tend to agree with you. I was discussing just the other day, and this is what I said. We were discussing that India is huge on missing buses of opportunity since 2004 at least. So, anyways, I'll now move on to Sandeep. International travel is not going to open big time, and in any case, it won't be the same as earlier. Shipping and transportation too would be slower than earlier. So how does all of that put a bigger burden on your shoulders? Do you see the buying business itself changing? How?
Yes, definitely to put a big burden on the shoulders of the buying agents. But let me buying agents, the fashion fraternity, we are all the fashion warriors at this point of time. So, we have to take up that challenge and responsibility on our shoulders. And like everybody also mentioned earlier, we've been working since the lockdown. We've been on Skype, on Zoom, all meetings are being done. The buyers are at home. California has started opening up because I cater majorly the West Coast at the moment. And we cater to some top-end US labels. And we are already using technology element, and definitely we'll have to plan deliveries in advance because of the labor issues at this end. We are already facing that challenge as well. The factories have opened in Delhi with 33% strength. In Gurgaon also, it has opened up. But again, we are having some challenges as far as the labor is concerned. So buyers are definitely not going to travel, and we also don't intend to travel initially. And we'll make use of the technology. And I guess and hope that things are resolved soon so that we all are back to track.
Right. Anyone would like to make a point there, add on to what Sandeep said?
I agree with Sandeep. Let's move to technology, and let's move to the more positive opportunities that we will be able to convert into business opportunities. So let's move towards that, Richa. I think that's very important, the positivity, because the energy is good. The factories are not upset. The energy is very good. The buying agents are like on the job all the time. They have SOPs in place. They are talking to the customers. We are talking to government. We are talking to press like you. We are talking to everybody. The energy is good. And the spirit is great. So let's go forward with the optimism. And please watch the time. We're already at 11:45.
Yes. Okay. I'll
so we got to be quick.
Yes.
Thank you.
Atul, the question is for you. India is a big exporter of carpets, and carpets, carpets constitute a reasonable chunk of that. So do you think carpet sales would be affected to the extent that apparel would be? Do you see India's market position being affected in the days ahead?
Absolutely. I mean, we are getting affected. The reason is very simple. Okay, please understand what is our competition today. Our competition is a Turkish machine-made carpet, which has copied exactly what the traditional carpets used to look like. Okay, so that is the bread and butter at the wholesale IKEAs of the world and other places. But the most encouraging part is that if you're working with the design teams, the architectural firms who are planning for future projects and everything, customization is the name of the game. So, I mean, we are into customization, 100% customization for the GCC market or anywhere in the world, whoever needs. So it's customization. What had happened in India was, earlier was like, let's take example of Badawi. Everybody was making one design and everything, and that was being exported all over the place. But now it is, you know, if you take case of a Jaipur rug company, which really focused and built up a company on a strong basis where they built design, the supply chain metrics right for the mass market, has done a great job. But we are seeing is movement towards customization. Having said that, today India is also getting ready for, you know, a lot of, when you're working with the great architectural firms, they're not looking at just the product per se of selling product. They're looking at the quality aspect. What are the indoor air quality parameters your product can meet? You know, so all these international standards are becoming very critical, even in the handloom sector. You know, ASO-free dyes to all that kind of stuff, and you know, getting CRI certification for indoor air qualities. So I think that is a big change we are looking up to. But it means that we have to train our labor force in India for those changes. The training process is still lagging way behind for that process to happen. I mean, if you go in, we still believe in sun to dry up our product, which is the right thing. The best colors come out in the sun, no doubt about it. But when you're into a contract business, it is a specific delivery which needs to be delivered. So how many factories are building this as a kind of a industry? Still, we are into a handicraft industry. Look at China, where build this up as a industry, where they have drying chambers of like 20 meters or 30 meters long, where you could dry your carpets today. You know, so there's a lot of work needs to be done on those parameters. But I see the demand still remains for these handmade carpets. There is, yes, Axministers, machine-made carpets which are coming out of China, machine-made coming out of Turkey, but the real quality is still coming out of India, because handmade production is major in India. And I think it's going to stay there, but we need to really invest into our process of development, technology. Everything needs to come in if we have to really stay that path.
My next question, you know, business deals are also about bargaining. In a world where everyone is squeezed for cash and life as much about sheer survival. I'm sorry, I don't want to sound negative, but then I'm just, you know, raising questions according to the circumstances that we are in today, and going forward, of course, you know, things will get brighter. So, in a world where everyone is squeezed for cash and all of that, we will probably see an era of hard bargaining. Who do you think is more likely to call the shots, the buyers or the sellers? Or is it going to be an old madhouse? What is it?
Buyer.
Okay.
Buyer.
It's always buyers.
It's always the buyer.
Even today, it's buyers.
See, we have always worked under the thing, you know, the rule called the buyer is the king. So
yeah.
We have to, I think the buyer is the king in this situation, which we produce for their market, and their market, the demand seems to be less, and you know, they will always say the footfall is very low, we need better prices.
Right.
There are always more suppliers in our country, or any country for that matter, and the buyers are limited. So obviously there is so much.
Yeah, that is. Globally, there are many suppliers, you know, even not country-wise. Globally, there are too many suppliers, especially in the apparel side.
It's all about economies. And if you are able to, if a buyer is able to get a price from somewhere in the world, they would not they would not pay anything extra to you They'll not give you any special treatment. So because, for the years I've been supplying to discount stores all over the world, in the beginning I used to think Walmart is the tightest person whom I can supply to. Then I thought Primark is the one. Then I thought this one is that. Now I am supplying to South African market, and I feel if someone can supply to South Africa, then you can supply to anywhere in the world. Because the type of prices they're doing, my suppliers in India, they fell down thinking of what kind of prices we are asking for. And we are supplying from India itself. There are different type of factories whose overheads are less, and they are capable to handle those orders, and they do it. So buyers are the king.
Okay. Vishal, I think we are running out of time. Vishal, yes, the question is for you. All countries are affected to varying degrees. Buyers in foreign countries themselves will be facing a cash crunch. How does one deal with such buyers, and what deals can one offer?
From India, frankly, our government has still not come out with a credit policy. If the economy has shrunk, which it has shrunk actually, our supply chain is broken. We have to put the supply chain, obviously, first of all, in-house. Then we have to offer a credit policy to the export sector. From what I heard yesterday from Mr. Modi, he was vocal about local. He wasn't vocal about any exports here. Obviously, he's talking about self-dependence within the country. I don't see exports to be the next focus point at all. He has made his money because the petrol prices have fallen. He doesn't care about exports anymore. Frankly, I'm saying that because I don't know anything else. I just see exports. I don't see any other sector out there for myself personally. The focus of our country has never been exports. It actually won't be exports. There will be people like you and me who would be into exports, have been there for 30, 40 years. We have made it. And in small numbers, we will still keep on making it. All economies have shrunk. They will keep on shrinking. We will have to fight. We will have to keep on fighting. But I don't see exports going back to the levels which we were, say, even like 2 months ago. I don't see that happening at all for next 2 years. Our supply chain has to be first in place before we can even go out and fight with anybody else. China, as Atul said, and then, obviously Mr. Langovan said, they are far ahead of us, 50 years, 40 years. India, no, we don't think we will be anywhere close to it.
We were talking about digitalization and all of that, where online is going to be, is the new world order. It's only going to get accelerated further. But at the same time, fashion is also about touch and feel, not just for the end consumer, but also buyers, for the buyers. How much of the work is going to be affected by this acceleration of online digital, the movement that we are seeing now? Yes, Venki, tell me.
Yeah, just want to share that last week we had, for the first time, a virtual mill week. So normally for the mill week at our overseas clients' offices, we would carry 6 suitcases of fabrics and probably thousands of hangers to show. But here you have maximum an hour and a half of that only that much of attention span. And then, so we had to narrow down our presentation to 100 and then down to 60. By the time we could hardly cover 40 fabrics. So as you show these fabrics, you have to talk. So you need very creative, articulate people who can explain the fabric, describe the fabric, and literally make the customer adopt that. And then thereafter, of course, we have to courier those 20, 30 things which he would like to touch and feel. And then the fabric gets adopted, and then it moves forward. So that was something going to happen continuously, that there are going to be hardly any overseas travel. And using 3D, we are giving the 3D virtual presentations, runways, and animations. Looks good, feels good, but not really effective. But still, we can't not invest in that. So I would encourage everybody to also invest into some kind of 3D designing tools.
Yes, Atul.
Yeah, I think what it is that, so far we have been basically into all our businesses as a policing business, whether the supplier is right or wrong, is he giving you what he's telling you right or wrong, are the specs of what he's saying is right or wrong. We have been policing all these kind of things for a long time. I think it has come to a point where supplier partner has to have that self-confidence to give you that product. You have to have that self-confidence, what he's saying is right, and build up those relationships, because I think in our industry the relationships have worked really well. I mean, we don't need to challenge those, but now we need to give that opportunity to the supply side of it to come up and show it to us what they're telling us is right and everything, rather than we policing them and finding out, did he do it right? Did he do the test right? With the FR rate? All these have to be now burden of the supplier himself, and that is going to be a big change, I think.
So, Anika, you wanted to make a point, yes?
I just wanted to add to what Atul has said, that this is the time that buying agents will have a very crucial role to play. The buyers are not going to be traveling for a while. And, if the trust is there in the buying agent, so he's the conduit between, supposing you've got small SMEs and they don't have the IT capability and, the 3D and everything that we spoke about.
Sure.
This is the time the buying agents will add value to the buyers, and the buyers will totally depend on them. Okay, yeah, you've seen it, you like it, you're happy, let's just go ahead. And as Venki was saying, one of the school of thought is that for some time, till the time travel and everything is happening, and I probably just wanted to ask Venki about this mill week that he did, was the focus more on the basics, because that's what we're hearing, for a while, the weird qualities and fashion bit is going to be on the back burner probably. So I just wanted to ask Venki, what were the kind of selections that happened? Were they more basic, or were they like really trend forward, etc.?
That depends actually on the customer. This customer was into fashion, so it was only fashion. A lot of fashion. Okay. Just add one point. Interestingly, you're talking about the role of buying agents. One of our customers, normally their head of quality assurance travels once in 3 months, 4 months to actually come walk through our factory, and he requested for a line walk virtual. So I would encourage everybody to prepare that. Imagine your customer is going to ask you for that. What kind of tools will you need? What kind of camera? What kind of preparation? So that you make that 20-minute walk and discussion fruitful. So we had to show him all the processes of the line and what was happening to his order right up to the final. And even we are having virtual factory tours.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, Elango, last, yes, please.
Yes, please. Post-COVID, I think the trust level has to increase to quite a large extent between the buyer, the principal, and the agents. And I think they should be, the agents should be given a lot of autonomy now, which, already we have started doing it even pre-COVID. A lot of fitting approvals have been done by us, and they agreed to it. And of course, the color approvals can be done with the technology, new technology. Spectrophotometers are there. I think people like Marks and Spencers are already using it, and we can start using that. I think with the travel restrictions post-COVID, there has to be a excellent trust level between the principal and the agents, and a lot of autonomy has to be given to the agents. That will be the
sure.
That'll be the rule of the day post-COVID.
Going forward, right?
Richa, may I make a point?
Yes. Sorry,
I just wanted to make a very brief point.
Yes, Jyoti.
There really is no post-COVID. COVID is here to stay, and we are going to have to work around it. So the manner in which we plan how to function is really not a short-term situation. It's going to be much longer.
Right.
So paying attention to all of these questions really is where we need to shift. How do we do those virtual line walks? How do we do audits without sometimes being in the facility? Sometimes we're not in the facility. How do we use 3D? So I think really we should be saying the world has changed completely.
Okay. Before I ask Christine to... Yes, before...
Just one moment, Richa.
Yeah, sure.
One of the participants is asking a question from the panelists is to how are you dealing with your customers on cancellations? How should the seller be dealing it in discounts and shipments, cancellations? So let's hear from the general body here. What advice can you give to the general buying agents on how to deal with this situation?
I'll take a stab at it. See, it all depends on your relationship and longevity with that client. You have to understand the client situation. The client has to understand your situation. If by taking a one-time hit, if you can somehow still salvage the order, it is good. To try to find a workable solution, because the fact that he or she is taking it itself is a big thing, because they're going to keep it for next spring to sell. So, but if you think the customer is being unfair and trying to rip you off, and then better take a cancellation and try to find an alternative.
Thank you, Venki. And I think Jyoti Saikia in the initial stages already said that we would be looking at cancellations on repurposing garments and selling them to different locations.
Give me a,
Go ahead,
please.
Lango. Yes, go ahead.
I think I wanted to say this for a long time. Let us represent ourselves, instead of calling ourselves as buying agents, why don't we start calling ourselves as fashion facilitators going forward?
Calling ourselves fashion?
Fashion facilitators.
Yeah.
Great.
Right.
Yes. Excellent. We are facilitators. Yes, we are. Definitely.
Yes, this is not like old days. We don't act like post office. We do a much more work than that.
Yes. And also, every business has a risk. And currently, the risk we're facing is not of a business risk, it's a world risk. So we all have to work together and find the best opportunity we can make out of it and keep going forward. Nothing's going to stop. We are just going to go forward with the current scenario, make use of the technology, which is now here to stay. We are, we have to jump onto that bandwagon and move as fast as possible. Thank you, Richa. And I'm going to ask Christine to wrap up. So if you have any questions for Christine, please, she's ready to field it.
I unmuted. So I think it was a wonderful session, and I think big take home is the relationship factor. I think that's really going to be important. And if anybody, buying agents do understand the need for strong relationships. We have strong relationships with our vendor factory partners. We have strong relationships with our clients. And if nothing else, I would say, looking at all our experiences in the last 2 months, it is those relationships which have allowed us to chart through this very stormy water that everybody's in. It's not just a tsunami hitting India. The tsunami has hit the whole world. So definitely relationships, super important. And just to do my plug for the BAA, we've seen ourselves how this has actually managed to bring us all together closer. I mean, some of us have met over the years, but for a lot of us, we're getting to meet properly for the first time. So, there are so many benefits to everything that's happening. So I would say that, in every struggle, there is huge opportunity. And we would not be good buying agents or fashion specialists or repositioning specialists or whatever we want to call ourselves if we were not seeing the opportunity. And I think at BAA, the message that we are taking out to our factory community in India is the technology side. As Venki has said, I know I've been on many panels with Jyoti where she's talked about it. We all realize technology is the game changer for all of us. And then I would like to talk a little bit about where I think India is always going to be in its own sphere. It is in the design and creativity that we have. And I just think we need to embrace that now more than ever. That's what Jyoti started with. I will fully endorse it. If we don't use our design and creativity, we are not going to be the next China, not in a million month of Sundays, as I like to say, but there's no reason why we can't try. but we should also always preserve and protect our USP, which is our design, our creativity, our ability to innovate, our ability to withstand almost anything. So I think that's a great strength. And I know there's a lot of tendency to think about what the government is not doing. I will actually mention on this panel, because I think it's good for us to know, the Commerce Ministry is currently chosen 6 industries to focus on for growth. And they are looking at export from that. It is not only, it is a little bit at what the growth in the domestic market. So the two industries that apply to our world are furniture and leather footwear. So I was on a Commerce Ministry panel yesterday, and it's really going to happen. How and where and what is, of course, all the pieces to the puzzle, but there is a huge amount of commitment, and it's not just government and government. FICCI and ASSOCHAM are the industry partners, so they're bringing in industry. So I really see, India wants to set up furniture hubs. They know that we're not cost competitive because we have no scale, and the same with leather footwear. Interestingly, the DGFT challenged the group and said, well, why aren't you talking about all footwear? And they said, no, leather's very specific, but once we fix leather, we can do it. And they are talking about, having components ready. And I think before we went into lockdown, the Textile Ministry was also talking about apparel hubs. So the government isn't, we do move forward. Sometimes it's 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, but we are always 1 step ahead. So I think we need to remember we are a country with many. We function in many centuries still, we function in many worlds, but if we focus on what we're good at, which is our creativity, our ability to innovate, and we definitely must embrace technology. So stay tuned, and look forward to seeing all of you on various chats and webinars. But I think the whole world is planning virtual trade shows. Venki, you're already doing your Mill Week. I think in the next few weeks, both the Carpet Export Promotion Council as well as EPCH are targeting virtual shows. And I think that the Milan Fashion Week is cancelled in July. That's going to be virtual. So, that is the new normal. We're all going to brush up on our technology and make sure that our people are really learning and embracing it. So thank you. It was a wonderful way to start the day with all of you. And thank you, Richa and Rohini, for putting this together. And thank you, Team BAA, for making it happen.
Thank you all.
Thank you all. And thank you for giving us your time to put this together. And let's go forward with our best foot and great happiness ahead for all of us and the businesses we handle. Thank you so much. Thank you, Richa.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
everybody.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
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 Bye.